Here we go. Hit. Here we go.
Hey,
Howdy. Welcome to Dream Idiots. My name is Morris, and the other fellow there is Brian. Each week we bring you stories. And Brian, what if I develop mic fright right now and just went totally silent? Would that
it'd be a very short episode because I
it'd be a
would.
very short episode. Anyway, each week we bring each other stories and bring you along for the ride. And we are about to start episode 141. Brian, what's up with you? Anything new? Anything good? Anything fun? Anything?
Not really, just life trundling forward. Good times. Is mic fright really a thing? People see it. There's mic when someone puts a mic in front of people, they panic.
I don't know.
No,
Uh,
you just made it up. So
Sure.
like the yips for audio. Like right?
Yeah, yes,
Can't quite do it.
exactly.
Right.
I wrote a great joke about yips and golfing one time, but didn't go over very well. I think I needed to tell it to a golfing audience, and that just didn't.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. The Venn diagram for Dream Idiots listeners and golfers
probably,
might be two separate distinct circles.
probably pretty slim.
Yeah, probably so.
And I like the two people I told it to, they're like, I don't get it. Then I
Uh,
told it to a golfer, they're like, oh yeah, that's good. I like that. That's
well, we appreciate
the
you.
part with the Parkinson's wasn't funny in the joke, but the rest of it was good. Anyway.
We appreciate you tagging along with us yet again. If you can, go on whichever platform you're listening to us on and give us 5 stars and shoot us a review. That would be hugely helpful. You can check us out at dreamidiots.com. You can drop us a line at dreamidiotspodcast@gmail. Check us out online at Instagram and Facebook, and actually some of the stuff I've been posting on YouTube. So if you want to watch middle-aged man in glasses talking, you can watch the video of this on YouTube even. That's youtube.com, I think, / at Dream Idiots Podcast. But just Google that and you will find it. And again, thanks for everything you're doing for us.
That's what we should have named the podcast, Middle-Aged Guys with Glasses. So, Brian, it is 141, so you get to go first this week.
All
What you
right.
got for us?
So, not really a story. I didn't want to interject a story with other personalities because I know you're coming up here with part 3 of your story on jazz ambassadors to celebrate Black History Month. And so I decided to do something that was not tied to a person or tied to history. Uh,
Most
and
kind of you, Brian.
and so in watching the news, obviously we're living in peculiar times, and I guess in order to celebrate or commemorate, I don't know, the fact that the new Secretary of Health and Human Services is an actual parasite. I wanted to come in this week on the podcast and offer up just a what I would call just a general list of recommendations for all of us to follow that hopefully we can survive the next 4 years while fucking Trump over and irritating him with our endless, unswerving belief that we have the right to exist. So I'm just calling this surviving Trump. Some people might hear this and think that I'm being inflammatory or over the top or I'm making a joke, and some of these I think will elicit laughs from you, but this is kind of dead serious. These are genuine suggestions culled from a variety of sources, and these are all things that I would absolutely now advocate for because we have a retard in the White House and we have no idea what's going to happen.
God.
It's there. It's going to go really really badly, and we just don't. There's no way to know how comically stupid the leadership of our country will behave, and so in response to that, here are some high level suggestions. There are 15 of them in no particular order, broadly under the categories of health, finance, employment, and just sort of general, I don't know, call them lifestyle recommendations with an ass clown in the White House. So, A number one, get vaccinated. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. thinks that the vaccines cause a whole host of problems, and basically, as far as I can tell, he thinks they do nothing to improve or secure health. So prove him wrong. Most health insurance plans, including I think every plan under Obamacare, will cover the cost of vaccines at no charge. A friend of the pod, Bill, is actually getting over a hideous case of the flu right now. And I actually I use that as an excuse to get my updates yesterday. I actually went to a drugstore nearby and got flu and COVID shots on the same day. I'm gonna go back and get shingles and RSV as well. Again, no cost to me. And even because these affordable healthcare plans are sometimes viewed as not really being that affordable. There are a ton of folks out there in Texas, especially, who don't have coverage. So go to your nearest drugstore, walk in, even if you have no coverage, and just see what the out-of-pocket cost is, the cash price for a flu or COVID shot. The cost of not getting these shots is going to be way higher. And do it all now while these shots are still available, and before we have to sign up for the mandatory ivermectin suppository or the brainworm insertion and all the other shit that's likely being planned. So, number two, research. Do a tiny bit of Googling. Wrap your brain around the fact that bird flu is a real fucking thing. There are now confirmed cases of human beings in Canada and the US, and actually more in Europe. So, do you have right wingers in your life who, avoided getting a COVID vaccine because it was all a lefty scam? Every reason now to suspect that their immune systems are substandard and they are opening themselves up to more issues, more problems down the road because they're compromised. So the odds of them getting bird flu has gone up. So when a conservative dies from their own stupidity, is it really a cause for grief or alarm? Or do we celebrate the fact that they have weeded themselves out of the gene pool? I don't know. I say fuck them. Uh, Number three, wear a mask. Flu, as I said, has been awful this year. We have bird flu apparently coming, and every reason to assume that COVID is going to be here for the long haul. I mean, as far as I can tell, most medical professionals think COVID is a permanent part of our life.
Yep.
So if you eat out a lot, go to places where there are lots of people, wear a mask. If you travel a lot, fly a lot, wear a mask on a plane. Work in a large office, wear a mask while you work. There's very clear reason why surgeons wear masks while operating on patients. It's not fashion. Masks catch bugs that otherwise would be spread. So wear a mask. Number four, defend yourself. Even now, people will have a problem with you wearing a mask or think you're crazy or want to make some political statement to you just because you're trying to protect yourself. People seem quite content to have physical altercations over masks. I'm not advocating or suggesting you seek out altercations because anyone willing to rip a mask off your face is probably willing to do far more than that. So tell them you're getting over a nasty bug while coughing in their face. Tell them you're in the midst of chemotherapy because your immune system is shot. Tell them whatever the fuck you need to tell them just to get them away from you. They're crazy and they have committed their life to the cult of Trump. So logic and reason are not tools you can now use. So just try to move away. Number five, I just recalled defend yourself even more. I'm not a gun person. I'm not advocating anyone buy a gun. But I've sort of considered having. I mean, there are things that are like mallets or pepper spray
Hmm.
because this shit's. I mean, people out there are crazy. The amount of road rage that's been happening recently has gone nuts. From 2017 to 21, there was a marked increase in domestic violence and crimes against women, sexual assault, whatever you want to call it. The sale of pepper spray and things like that went up during Trump's first term. And there's a whole host of products out there that can, tied to your phone, you can put on your key ring that could prove to be incredibly helpful should you need them. Pretty much the climate right
Even
now.
just the siren, even just the
Right.
siren that just calls attention to, hey, this
Right.
asshole is doing something you shouldn't be
Right.
doing.
Ass fuck, ass fuck, ass. Right. She screams that. Uh, and so, I mean, that's the climate we're in right now. I mean, this climate benefits extremely wealthy straight white men. So if you're a person of color, or you're trans, or you're gay, or you're brown, or you're black, or you have a uterus, really anything other than a straight white man who makes $500,000 a year or more, you're completely fucked, whether you know it or not. So, you know, protect yourself.
Check your state laws for what is allowed, and the best way to go about procuring them, like tasers and pepper spray
Oh
and
yeah.
retractable
Hmm.
batons. Because state law does differ from one place to the other. It is kind
Oh,
of funny how you can
okay, that's
buy
good to know.
a handgun, but you can't buy a retractable baton. I mean, it's spring-loaded baton, anything.
Right.
Um,
So, something might be better than nothing, but I didn't realize those are regulated and it varies by state.
oh,
So
they
yeah.
are, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
your best bet if you're going out for a walk, honestly, and do not take this as legal advice, but carry
A cane.
a big mag flashlight,
Oh,
because it's just a flashlight that weighs a lot and might knock
right.
somebody
Waste.
unconscious,
Right.
but
Right. Right. Right.
it's just a flashlight.
Right. Yeah. Good call. So number six, I'm calling just more health issues. So we started with getting vaccinated, minimally increase your level of fitness. So get a walk, drink some water, get some sleep, do whatever you can to minimize your stress. I do now completely believe that these bastards want average people to be dying in droves. We saw it in 2021. Over a million, I mean, I forget what the final count was, but over a million people just in this country died of COVID. And while that was happening, Trump advocated for bleach and UV light. They don't care. So if you have insurance, even if it's an ACA plan, go visit your GP at least once just to get a once over, a poke and prod, right? We live in a culture now where seemingly people kind of avoid the doctor because they either don't want bad news or they simply can't afford to go. And if that seems too severe or too time consuming, simply walk into there are at least in San Antonio, seemingly these little pop up emergency clinics every 200 yards. Most of them are privately run, I believe, and a lot of them won't take any insurance at all. But you got a sinus infection, got a low level gunk. You want to just get a once over.
Hmm.
You can walk in there, get a steroid shot, and maybe discover something you didn't know. So I don't know, just a thought. Uh, Number seven, stocking up. So I'm not one to, I don't believe in taking crazy severe actions in the face of emergency. In Texas, 4 years ago in 2021, we had what was locally dubbed the snowpocalypse. So depending where you were in the state, it was sort of 3 to 6 days with no power because the grid in Texas is a train wreck. So not only is our country now run by complete fucking idiots, the state of Texas is being run by evil fucks since the 90s. So 4 years ago, when the grid failed, there are several dozen people in Houston who froze to death, including several elderly folks. And there was, of course, all kinds of drama in grocery stores as people sought to hoard paper towels and bottled water. I don't quite get how paper towels would help, but um, maybe on a low level, that's not such a bad idea. Most people can get away with like a gallon of water a day for drinking sort of general use. And if these idiots run the country into the ground, there's no way if our water supplies will be adequately maintained or if they'll be clean. So 1 gallon of water per person in your household per day might not be a bad idea. Most of the companies out there that make, sort of the single serving things of water, 12 ounces, whatever, also make it available in 1 gallon and 3 gallon. So maybe having a little bit of water on hand wouldn't hurt, as well as, just a little bit of non-perishable foods because, you just never know. Number eight, partner with your neighbors. Get to know your neighbors at least a little bit. Speaking of water, toilets famously use a lot of it. So during the aforementioned snowpocalypse, you had cases I know here where apartment complexes and retirement homes that had staff on site were using water from the pool, and then carting it up to various rooms to top off toilets so everyone could flush. Figure out who lives around you that can be part of your informal network. Does your neighbor have a pool? Do you have someone nearby that has rainwater collection? Are they partially off grid and have solar? Knowing these things might be super helpful. Number nine, garden. Even if you're in a rental, do you have any space at all where you can grow vegetables? Even a small space. You don't have to be an expert. Anything you can create on hand, even if you're in a rental, might be helpful. Onions, potatoes will grow even in crappy soil. And if you learn a little bit, they'll actually come back year after year. Very, very low maintenance. If you learn a little bit, you can kind of do the same with tomatoes and other plants. You're saving money, and it's stuff that's on your property, so you don't have to go anywhere for it. And this gives you something that you could potentially trade with. Number 10, eggs. Depending on the source you check, you can find there are numerous stories out there on Snopes and other places where there is, the tale is the government of this city, this municipality in Denmark, Norway, wherever the hell it is, um, basically incentivizes folks to take three, four, five, six chickens, and the result of that is that family has a consistent source of protein while offsetting tons of land, organic landfill, or right. People dispute whether these stories are accurate or not, but be that as it may, if you had a handful of chickens and you're, depending on where you live and it's allowed, why not do that? They will eat, they won't eat nearly as much as like pigs will, but pretty much any of your garden waste they will consume. And again, they're giving you constant free protein, something that is super helpful. Again, something else you can trade. Number 11, incentives from the government. Now, this may seem counterintuitive because it's likely lots of these programs will probably go away, but many of them are actually offered through local or state programs. If you own your home, figure out what's out there for you to get solar panels installed at a discount, rainwater collection systems at a discount, because both of those could be incredibly useful. At least as at present. I mean, it varies wildly based on where you live, but sometimes these things are 80% off. Sometimes they're installed even for free. But because this is very much a lefty ideal, I can see these programs slowly going away, but still worth looking into. Number 12, a passport.
Hmm.
My useless ex decided to keep my passport just because being a cunt is fun. And so she has mine, but I'm in the process of getting a new one. And I mean, there are, of course, there are these widespread layoffs across numerous departments. I have not heard about layoffs in the Department of State necessarily, but having a passport in case or unless you want to leave the country would be quite helpful.
And if you have the option of uh, getting a passport to another country, if you are perhaps have a relative or you were born in another country. My wife, for example, just recently
Hmm.
was able to look into getting her Australian passport back. Do that as well. I mean,
Right.
if that's something that's workable within the system,
Yeah.
get that other passport.
Yeah, I mean that was next on my list.
Oh,
I label it family connections and citizenship. So,
hmm.
friend of the pod, Caesar is a friend of mine who I believe was born in Spain. Although I'm not certain about that, but has lived extensively in Spain, Mexico, England. He may have actually lived in Portugal for a time as well, and he definitely has dual citizenship between the U.S. and I think Spain. I mean, there's already going to. I mean, the exodus of Americans has begun because there are places I know in Mexico that are already complaining about all the Americans and the additional costs. I mean, prices are going up, and so locals are getting frustrated by that. But researching that, figuring out what your options are, it may become incredibly helpful to not be in this country at some point here reasonably soon. So worth investigating. Number 14, money. Again, along with the idea that we all need paper towels and canned vegetables, consider some financial flexibility. There are people who, you know, survivalists who keep cash on hand. Uh, Maybe having some cash on hand isn't a bad idea. Maybe having some money in Venmo or Cash App or online banks. Trump may decide that the FDIC no longer needs to support Wells Fargo or Bank of America or fill in the blank. Just because it's Tuesday and he's feeling constipated, right? You don't know what these fuckers will do. If you travel, have any means of traveling outside the country, having an international bank, so Credit Suisse, Santander, Barclays.
Not
Santander's
Deutsche Bank.
no, not them, but I had three different friends or colleagues of mine who have traveled, may have Mexican citizenship, who currently have accounts with Santander, and Santander technically is a Spanish-owned bank, and so hopefully that gives you some security and some flexibility, depending. And the last one, I just labeled this remove toxicity. You may or may not have people in your life that are shitty or disrespectful or unkind. We all do, regardless of whether they're lefties or right wingers. Broadly, in my mind, it seems like people believe that the motives of those close to them are good, or maybe they're just difficult to discern. Look at the people who are close to you, neighbors, coworkers, whoever. Ask yourself the question: would this person be in my corner in a crisis? Does this person want me to thrive? If there is a moment of doubt, any hesitation, when you ask yourself that question, the answer is pretty clear. These people, especially if they are MAGA, make themselves readily known. You don't need to engage them. You don't need to insult them or argue with them. It's a pointless endeavor. But good people you can rely upon make their motives clear, at least in my opinion. Uh, as a final kind of aside, I realize that virtually everything on this list, most things here require an outlay of money, and I don't have the stats in front of me, but I've read them in the past that something like 95% of all Americans at present only have like a month's worth of living expenses set aside. So this is going to be a long and painful process. So do what you can, take care of yourself, and as Morris says at the end of every episode, be good to each other.
I like that list, Brian. That's a great list. I think we should definitely put that on the website as a you know
As a text file,
as a text file.
minus the curse words.
I would throw under number seven, stocking up. Get a go bag ready
Oh,
with a pair of pants, a couple shirts, some underwear, some socks, and
yep.
whatever take like 10 days, or if you can, a week, 5 days to 7 days of whatever medications you need. Put those aside in a special place
Yeah, also good.
with in a duffel bag with some clothes, some cash, toiletries, anything you need, and have that ready to go. So all you have to do is grab your documents, your passport, toss it in that go bag, and you're gone.
Right,
That really is not a bad. Put a couple energy bars in there, maybe a couple bottles of water, and just have that ready to go, and just have it, you know, right under your bed, next to your bedside table, by the front door, wherever you need to put it, and just have a go bag ready.
right. Just in case the shit hits the fan.
That's good for anybody, I think, not just people on, witness protection programs. So,
And,
um,
and, and, along those same lines, um, keep gas in your car.
yeah,
You
yep,
know, half tank at least, just in case.
yep. Well, thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
That wasn't nearly as doomsday prophetic
No, trying to be,
as it could have been.
practical and funny at the same time, but this is going to be just a complete shit show.
Speaking of shit shows, are you ready for the curse word of the week? Because
I
I
am.
got one this week.
Okay, go.
Brian, I'm gonna send you a picture here in a moment, but the word of the week kind of comes from the German, and as we've said, and you've said many times on the show, they come up with the best curse words. This comes from courtesy of Rick, from a listener from here in Aurora, Colorado. The curse word of the week, Brian, is wankpanzer. Do you want to take a guess as to what a wankpanzer is?
I think I saw this somewhere online in passing, uh, and it was like the caption underneath a Tesla Cybertruck. But go ahead.
I've just sent you that meme. It is Wankpanzer. We all know what a wanker is. Panzer is a German word for, there you go. Yeah, Wankpanzer. Uh, Panzer is a German word that means basically any armored vehicle.
Right, right, right.
So if you want to read that definition under Wankpanzer there, Brian,
The perfect neologism, neologism,
new word, the perfect new word for perfectly
new word.
hideous.
I thought I was saying that incorrectly. For a perfectly hideous automotive phenomenon. Yeah. So the Hummer, is another great example of that.
The Wankpanzer, yes.
Yeah, the Wank Panther.
I wonder if I ever redo that worst cars ever list that I read that one time, if that this one will show up, because we've got a couple in our neighborhood, and every time we see it, we just shake our hands and shake our
Uh,
heads, and you're just like, Jesus
oh
Christ,
God.
what a nightmare! What
Well,
an awful design.
it is helpful when douchebags just stand up and make themselves known.
Yeah, look at me, I'm a
Right.
shithead. Yes.
Oh, backers baseball cap and the Oakley sunglasses. Oh, okay, yeah, I know who you are.
Yeah, like the time I was at our local water park, which fortunately the boys have finally outgrown. Um, and there was a guy behind a line me, a guy in front of me in line who had a Trump t-shirt on, backwards baseball cap, and a ankle monitor. Just the perfect combination
Yes.
of douchebaggery. Yes, winning at
Excuse me,
life.
sir. Can I please introduce you to my daughter?
It's time for my story, and like you said, Brian, this is the third and final part to something I'm calling the Jazz Ambassadors. Are you ready?
Alrighty.
The first two parts of this three-part story took us to World War One, and if you haven't listened to parts one and two, go back and do that. As Lieutenant James Reese Europe led an African-American regimental band through war-torn France, the soldier musicians played jazz for French towns, culminating in a magnificent concert in Paris. From there, we went to Five Points, Colorado, the Harlem of the West. We even had a few things to say about Toledo, Ohio, and Toledo, Spain. And we learned in 1948, Denver's first official sister city was Brest, France, where James Reese Europe had landed 30 years prior. In Denver, there's a commemoration of this sister city relationship in the form of a public green space, the City of Brest Park. It lies off of Cherry Creek South Drive and Colorado Boulevard. I don't even want to think how many times that sign has been stolen. We stay in Colorado for this final chapter, sort of. It was Father's Day, June 19th, 2022. I most likely woke that morning in that weekend haze you have when you should already be up and about but aren't. My family wished me a happy Father's Day, and as I lay in bed, had 7 seconds of forgetfulness. I made a mental note to call my dad. After the 7 seconds passed, I knew I wouldn't call him or send him a card or receive a call or card from him. My dad had died almost 2 years earlier. As we all know, grief is not linear or logical. I opened a few gifts, but had no breakfast, just coffee, because we were headed to Dazzle for Sunday brunch. Jazz and food, two of my favorite things. Dazzle opened its door to Denver Jazz Hounds in 1997 up on Lincoln Street. Today, it's located in the Denver Performing Arts Complex downtown on 14th. But in between those two locations, from 2017 to 2023, Dazzle could be found in the Bowers Building on Curtis Street. Bowers Building was home to Bowers Restaurant and Confectionery, a part of Denver for 8 decades. The site has a National Historical designation, and that's where we were that Sunday, listening to the music of Pernell Steen and his Five Points Jazz Ambassadors. You may recall his name from the last episode. I think I
Mhm.
had a quote from him. He's the one who I believe noted that it was Jack Kerouac who gave Five Points its name, the Harlem of the West. I bought a few pieces of used vinyl there that day, including trumpeter Red Rodney's excellent 1955 album, Modern Music from Chicago. This has absolutely no bearing on the story. It's just a really great album, and I thought I'd share it with you. The meal was superb, the audience attentive, held in sway by not only the music, but by the stories. These came from the pianist and band leader Pernell Steen. A great live music performance, particularly a jazz one, puts me in a trance-like state. Internal clocks just seem to stop or speed up or whatever it is that hits my brain in a certain way that bends and stretches the passage of time. Kind of like when we saw George Clinton and the P-Funk All-Stars at Stubbs Barbecue, but I
Hmm.
think that had more to do with some
Yeah, the cloud.
environmental issues. Yes. Pernell Steen's stories had the same effect on me as the music did. Stories mainly of his family, his many relatives themselves who were or are musicians. Among them, vocalist Diane Reeves, saxophonist Eddie Cleanhead Vinson, and pianist George Duke, and one other I'll address in a moment. The Five Points Jazz Ambassadors were a sextet, I believe, for most of the numbers. A vocalist joined them for a few songs. At some point, Pernell Steen turned his attention to a certain member of the audience, an elderly African American gentleman sitting in a wheelchair at the table next to ours. What follows paraphrases Steen's introduction. I'd like to introduce a gentleman out in the audience, a bass player himself. He's also my cousin. His name is Charlie Burrell. Charlie, what do you think of the young fella up there playing your instrument? Mr. Burrell laughed, gave a nod, and said, he sounds right on time. The audience laughed with him. Charlie here is pretty special, Steen said. He played with everybody. You might remember Charlie Burrell from part two. He was the kid from Detroit who chose to learn the upright
Hmm.
bass because that was the only instrument left in his elementary school's music room. That Father's Day, as Charles Burrell sat listening to his cousin's band, he was 101 years old.
Wow.
And in those 101 years, he
Mhm.
had played with lots of great musicians, not all of them jazz players. In 1949, he joined the Denver Symphony Orchestra and thus became the first African American to play for a major American symphony. In 1959, he became part of the San Francisco Symphony and played for conductor Pierre Monteux, whose career Burrell had followed since he was a child. During his time in the Bay Area, Burrell became the first African American to play in the San Francisco Opera and the San Francisco Ballet. He was also the first African American professor at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. Back to jazz. Burrell also played in the first racially integrated jazz trio in Colorado. He was mentor to the great jazz bassist Ray Brown. He served as Grand Marshal for Denver's annual Five Points Jazz Festival. His jazz cohorts during his playing career included Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Clark Terry, Al Gray, Lionel Hampton, Errol Garner, Ella Fitzgerald, Gene Harris, Charlie Parker, and one other. Cousin Charlie, Steen continued, is the last living musician to have played with Miss Billie Holiday. Stunned silence, then applause from all of Dazzle's patrons and staff. To have played with Billie Holiday. Her renditions of God Bless the Child and You're My Thrill were my introduction to vocal jazz. No offense to Miss Ella Fitzgerald, Miss Carmen McRae, or Miss Sarah Vaughan, but Miss Billie Holiday will always be my favorite vocalist for what my opinion's worth. If her status were ever in question, that was laid to rest the first time I ever heard Strange Fruit, a devastating song about lynchings in the American South. With Mr. Charles Burrell that day, we were in the presence of a great musician, a leader, a teacher, a living connection to the jazz artists of the past. Mr. Burrell nodded and waved to everybody, and the music started up again. I thought then, as I do now, that my dad would have loved all of it. The music, the stories, the meal, being with his grandchildren. The rest of that Father's Day passed far too quickly. Later in the fall of 2022, a magnet school for K through 12 grades opened in Aurora, Colorado. It's named the Charles Burrell Visual and Performing Arts Campus. And by the way, Charles Burrell, while he grew up in Detroit and then moved to Denver in his 20s, he was actually born in Toledo, Ohio. See, Bryan, it's all connected.
That's all full circle.
As of this writing, Charles Burrell is going strong at 104. Also in the fall of 2022, in September, Pernell Steen and his 5 Points Jazz Ambassadors headed to Brest, France. After two concerts in the coastal city, the 5 Points Jazz Ambassadors retraced the trail Lieutenant James Reese Europe and his band had blazed over a century before. In this case, however, jazz was already known on the continent, and it had flourished in France, in Denmark, in Sweden, in Finland, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in Switzerland. It had even hopped across the channel to England. American jazz musicians had visited and recorded famous albums in that period of time. Chet Baker in Paris, Cecil Taylor in Copenhagen, Les McCann at Lake Geneva, Ornette Coleman in Stockholm, Miles Davis all over the place. Some musicians had, like saxophonist Ben Webster or drummer Kenny Clarke, made a European country their permanent home. Or maybe they had an extended stay, as the case with Dexter Gordon. Many African American jazz musicians found European countries much more appreciative of their talents, their experiences, and
I'm
their
sure.
identities than their home country.
Yep.
All American jazz musicians who play in other countries are, in a sense, our jazz ambassadors. They share their gifts with the world. I'll end with a quote from Pernell Steen. "This is how the world should be," Steen said, reflecting on his joyous trip to France. "Just be a light in the dark world. Everywhere you go, let your light shine." And Bryan, that is the story of the Jazz Ambassadors.
Wow.
Yeah,
Excellent. Happy Black History Month.
yes, and
Yeah,
there are
it's
tons of
amazing.
sources for this story because it was a three-parter. I'm going to run through these very quickly. Uh, Karina Balch's August 2022 article from 5280.com. Denver jazz artists share what Dazzle means to them. Jeffrey Jackson 2003 book. I really recommend this if you're into World War I history and music history. A book called Making Jazz French, Music and Modern Life in Interwar Paris from Duke University Press in Durham. I use the Kindle edition. Martin King and Michael Collins' 2018 book, again, if you're a World War I buff, Lost Voices, The Untold Stories of World War I Veterans and Their Families from Lyons Press in Lanham, Maryland. Stephen Leonard and Thomas Noel's 2016 book, A Short History of Denver from, strangely enough, the University of Nevada Press in Reno. Laura Mock's 2001 book, Images of America, 5 Points Neighborhood of Denver from Arcadia Publishing in Charleston, South Carolina. Um, my information on the Klan from the last episode came from Ed Quillen's excellent Welcome to Colorado Klan Country. And Colorado Klan and Country are all spelled with Ks. At the Colorado Spring Independent for May 21st of 2023, updated in October of 2020. Callie Sumlin's article on 5280.com from April of 2017, Dazzle Moves Downtown. William Brooks' undated MSN.com article, How Jazz Music Formed the Harlem of the West in 5 points. No, just a few more. A bunch of websites. ColoradoEncyclopedia.org for info on old club names in 5 points. DenverSisterCities.org for information on the twinning with Brest, France in 1948. GoPlayDenver.com for Sister City parks in Denver. We have quite a few. The Historical Marker Database.org, info on Bowers Building. SisterCities.org for info on the Sister Cities movement. PurnellSteenMusic.com for his interviews and reflections on Charlie Burrell and jazz in Colorado. UrbanSpectrum.net, a great piece by Purnell Steen and Andrew Hudson called Charlie Burrell, a Denver musical legend. Wikipedia for basic info on France, bioinformation, Toledo, Sister Cities, etc. A TV clip from a show called Next with Kyle Clark on the Sister Cities of Denver and Brest. And then an excellent Rocky Mountain PBS documentary from 2014, Season 1, Episode 105, Rocky Mountain Legacy Jazz in 5 points. And that is from PBS. I did listen to one of the albums I mentioned earlier. I listened to Cecil Taylor's album live at the Café Montmartre during the writing of the story, recorded in Copenhagen in November of 1962, featuring Cecil Taylor on piano, Jimmy Lyons on alto saxophone, and Sonny Murray on the drums. A great record that gets 4.5 stars on All Music Guide out of 5. And the Penguin Guide, which is a British record guide, recorded this album as deserving the crown, which is their way of saying 5 stars isn't enough for this record. They have, I think,
Giving it 6 stars out of 5.
I went through and counted all the crowns once in the edition of Penguin I had at over 900 pages of reviews. They had 37 crowns. That's it. So it's not something they hand out willy-nilly.
Right.
But there's lots of great albums that were recorded over in Europe. Miles Davis had one in Berlin, in Tokyo. Well, that's not Europe, but Tokyo, France. I mean, the list is endless of the
Right.
folks who went over there for work and appreciation of their arts.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Great story. At some point we will, I don't know, maybe sooner rather than later, compile all 3 of those and put them out together. So you can actually listen to them all at once. So we'll do that at some point, maybe later on this year.
I think it'd be
Um,
good. Let's
yeah.
plan on putting it out for the 5 Points Jazz Festival, which goes on every year. Let's maybe plan it for the week of
Okay.
that. I'll get you the dates and we can work that
Yeah.
out because the 5 Points Jazz Festival is a very special day here in Denver. It's a
Okay.
great day to be had.
And the song, "Strange Fruit," is one of those songs that is so. I find it hard to listen to because it is
Oh yeah.
so devastating. It's amazing. You should listen to it a time or two just so you can appreciate it. But it's a hard listen when you know, if you know what it's about. It's a hard listen.
Well, it's one of those songs where it, if you know what it is going into it, you're almost better off because you might be, oh, this is a lovely, oh my God, what did she just say?
Right.
It's just a devastating, devastating song.
Right.
And again, in my opinion, Billie Holiday gives it just a spectacular treatment. So,
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
all right.
All right. Thanks, folks. Thanks for tagging along and listening to us yet again. Check out dreamidiots.com. Shoot us a review or give us 5 stars on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, wherever you're listening to us. That would be great. Check us out on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook at Dream Idiots, or do some Googling and drop us a line if you want. Dreamidiotspodcast@gmail.com. drimediates.com. And here this week, there actually will be a physical address. So if you want to send us a card or cash, you can do that too here soon.
Um, yeah, and maybe this weekend or like over the next week, go out and see some live music with somebody. Go out to it, even if it's a pub that has a I don't know, folk singer on there or some jazz musicians, or go out and do some live music. It's good for the soul. It really is.
I agree. Hmm.
And anything else, Brian? Are we good?
We're good. We're out.
All right. Well, be good to each other, folks. See you next time.